G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and this is a video tutorial on drawing the anatomy of the torso muscles. Now, as with my other anatomy lessons, I will give you 3 quick disclaimers. First of all, I am not an expert and I don't know everything about muscles and all that stuff. Second of all, this is an aesthetic approach to drawing muscles, not a technical approach. So I won't be able to name all of the muscles, and that's not the point of the lesson. The point of it is to give a simple approach as to how intermediate or beginner artists can, learn these simple things to draw more accurate anatomy. And third, while I will be drawing male anatomy, it applies this in the same way to female anatomy, but it's just easier to show on male anatomy without making it look less feminine if I was drawing a female. So jumping straight into it, I have prepared this example of just how we're going to be approaching the torso. Now this is, you can see my construction lines there. That's how I kind of went into that. But without the construction lines, this is what the how I would draw, the back, the side of the torso and the front of the torso. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in and muscle group by muscle group, just kind of outline the major areas of muscles in which I would be focusing on when I draw. So I'll start off with the back. The back's a little bit tricky. It's, how do you explain it? There are a lot of little muscles in the back, but when you're drawing characters and you're showing their back muscles and they're a muscular figure, you don't have to draw all the little muscles. You just need to know where the most robust ones are. So if you go onto Google Images and look up back anatomy or back muscles, you'll see a lot of those little muscles, but there are a few of the main larger ones that stand out the most, that are easiest to outline first. Now, first and foremost, these ones up here. Now, the shape of these changes in the sense that like when the arm is lifted or when the back is kind of crunched back, this kind of is pulled in. And when it's when the arms are straight and flat and it's not as tense, it's much more even shape. But I kind of think of it like they remind me somewhat of wings in a sense, and that's how I remind myself what they look like and what shape to draw. So that's the shape of those muscles there and how they connect back here. Cool. So that's that's the first muscle group, and again we'll go into how they connect into things like the shoulders. So I'll draw the outline of the shoulder muscle group here. Now the shoulders are interesting. They're a connection point. The back muscles fold into it, the arm muscles fold into it, the chest muscles fold into it. So the shoulders are something that you really want to get comfortable drawing. So a lot of that will be involved in just practice and just over time getting used to that. So that's the first back muscle that I focus on, and that's the top half of the back muscle and the most robust muscle in the back. And second is this bottom half down here. It folds up in underneath this top wing shape muscle and goes down into the lower back. And the shape of it kind of like is in this sort of direction. Like that. So I'll just go ahead and add the second one. Now for those, if there is anyone watching this who actually knows technicalities of these muscles, just be forgiving and know that these tutorials are much more about knowing some simple approaches of basically where to draw some dividing lines. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a bit hot in here. Oh. All right. So that's the back, and there's really not much more I would go into. I mean, there are lots of little muscles in this area, but essentially I just kind of keep that just as a bit pushed out. And if you divided the back in half, there are pretty much 1, 2, 3 areas in the back, and that's how I would divide them. Now going into the torso, I'm going to start off by shaping in the shoulder muscle, just because the chest really just tucks into that quite a lot. In a example that I'll draw after I finish outlining these muscle groups, I'll show you how I approach the deforming of the chest muscle in accordance with the moving of the shoulder and the arm. We'll get to that in a moment. So I'll outline the shoulder muscle first, just to set that basic thing up. Alright, so jumping straight into the chest muscle, let's get a nice orange. Okay, the chest muscle is probably the most large and warpable muscle in the torso muscle group. It's quite a large muscle, and when you move the arm, when you move the body, it's quite malleable. Now, if we're getting a little more technical, the chest muscle starts in the middle of the chest and pulls out, and so the mass of the chest muscle is at the front here, but it kind of like strings out from the center and then it tucks into the shoulder. But the chest itself is in lots of parts, so it's almost like if you get a chunk of meat, or if you look at technical pictures of muscles, it's not just one big hunk of meat. Like if you look at this chest muscle area here, it's quite large and kind of, you know, a very symmetrical shape. But if you look at technical photos and stuff of chest muscles, it's very folded into itself like this, you know, and it branches out from the middle, and it kind of tucks up into the arm like that. So I'll just draw the outline of the chest here, but keep that in mind. That's something that is good to keep in mind, especially when you're trying to figure out how the chest would deform or change shape when you draw different poses. So just to leave as a reminder, I'll kind of draw those stretchy outlines from here, just to show that it kind of starts there, but they tuck into this point here pretty much. Cool, same thing over here. Alright, so that's where, that's the way I would approach drawing the chest. We'll get to starting from scratch later, but next, when people think torso, like their core muscles, the torso muscles, abs or the abdominal muscles are one that jump to mind very quickly with people, because people associate very muscular people with that sort of the six pack, as we call it. Now it's funny, there are actually more than 6. I think there are like 8, and I know that the first group start quite close up here, immediately under the chest. But unless you're like a mega bodybuilder, they're usually not the most defined. It's more these muscle groups under here. Oops, I don't want to have that too asymmetrical. That tend to be more defined in the abdominal. And to be honest, it's actually very rare for them to be so clearly divided. In general, you look at like superhero characters, like, you know, especially like athletic ones like Spider-Man or whatever. And depending on the artist, in general, it's more a guideline of where the abdominal muscles are. You don't see the individual muscles, you know, chunked out like that. And if you do, it's usually with bigger, chunkier, like the Hulk, those kind of characters. Which is good, because I'm drawing these in green, and the Hulk is green. Oh, man! Blew my own mind. So there we go. We have this kind of panel of muscles that stretches down the body like that. Next, we'll go into these side muscles. So I have my references on the side here because I don't want to miseducate people, which I'm sure I'm probably very much doing, but that's okay. Okay, now, I don't know what these are called. What's the name? Serratus anterior. Don't care. See? Don't know names. Because we're classy here. But we have this weird area at the very side of the rib cage, these muscles that kind of fold into each other like this. And they stretch out and down along the torso. Now, almost like with the shaping of the abdominal muscles, they don't really stick out heaps. Unless they're technical drawings, you know, that are, or ridiculously ripped, toned characters like the Hulk. They don't, they're not often needed to be drawn. But it's good to know that they're there, and you can at least allude to them with very small sort of lines. But that's what that is. And they kind of stretch into the abdominal area. Very cool. And finally, we have this area down here where you kind of get this this V sort of shape, which leads into the groin. So as you can see in the side-on drawing here, kind of goes up and over where the gluteus maximus is. See, I know what that one is, and that's the bum. The gluteus maximus. Anyways, back to it. But yes, that's a bit of a group there. I actually think I misdrew this. I think it should kind of like tuck over like that. But you get the idea. In general, my approach when drawing muscles, there is a lot of guesswork, to be completely honest, for someone who doesn't know the technicalities of it. And it's about looking at other artists' styles, the things that they emphasize, occasionally looking up technical references, and feeling out for yourself stylistically what you draw, what you need to draw to accurately depict muscle anatomy, and torso in particular is a bit tricky. So if I was to finally give you an example as to how I approach drawing that chest deformation, I would start off with my construct lines. Now, my construct lines for the torso, it starts off with this sort of oval shape, which is the rib cage essentially, and then I draw the pelvis area. So they're my very basic construct lines, and then when I start to refine that more, I give it a direction line, so I'll give this a 3/4 perspective. I want this looking up, and if I felt like properly defining the rib cage, I'd kind of add this dip under here, which is the sort of shape of the rib cage itself. And then I want to, in this example, have a really raised up, have really lifted up arms, as if this example is holding something above their head. So I'm going to draw the shoulders quite high and raise the arms like this. Now, how do I approach from this drawing the skin on the bones, so to speak, or the muscle on the bones? Well, I'll lock that in. And let's do this color by color like we did before. So let's take our torso color. So our chest color. Actually, no, I shouldn't start with the chest. My bad. I should start with the shoulders. Okay. So starting up kind of just where the shoulder ends. That's my shoulder. Where the neck ends is where it begins. And from this angle, you don't see the shoulders very much. They kind of tuck up like that. Right? But the emphasis here is going to be more on the chest. So while it starts in the same sort of place in this middle bit, it stretches in a way that instead of, you know, following the normal chest area like that, if his arms were down, they're really being quite pulled up like this into the shoulder area. So already that looks kind of weird and a bit like tight and close, and the chest doesn't take up as much room as you might expect. But moving on, we start to outline the abdominal area. So I wouldn't draw those muscles directly underneath the chest. Sorry, it feels a little bit small at the moment, so I'm just going to drag that out. There you go. Okay, and because this is stretching with the arms raised directly up, all of this area, all of the front area is going to be really pulled vertically. So the division lines between the, you know, abdominal muscles are going to be really pulled because of that. Okay. And then next, we have these side ones I don't know the name of. Ha 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 ha. Oh, you. And this muscle that kind of folds over into the V area of the crotch. Okay, now I actually feel like I've stretched that a bit too much, so I'll just kind of pull that out. I feel a little bit better about that, and I'm going to bring the abdominals down a bit, and I'm going to stretch the chest down and out a bit. Now, in terms of making these little changes, that's the point of doing the construct lines. You feel your way through it. So you're going to make mistakes, but it's good to be able to recognize those. Now, when drawing an open sort of pose like this, the back of the rib cage is always very solid. So that's always going to be the same rough sort of large size. But when everything is really stretched like that, the inside of the chest, like the abdominal area and anything between here and here, can become quite thin and malleable, because that's the part which isn't wrapped around by bone. And finally, I'll just kind of add the arm muscles. I'll just kind of add a rough guideline there. Okay, so we've got our quick sketch into that pose. Now let's wrap the skin on those muscles. So I'll zoom in a little bit, and I'm just gonna keeping the layering in mind, just kind of outline the shape of these muscles. Now, when drawing the skin over where the muscles are positioned, it's important to just, unless the character is like the Hulk or like a superhero or whatever, where the muscles are massively defined or really, you know, what's the word, like really ripped and toned. In general, you just want to kind of get the outlines in. You just want to display the rough, like, show enough line work, but not too much, to display that anatomy is a part in the piece, whatever that piece is. Okay, so for example, in drawing the line work over the torso here, I wouldn't individually outline every single abdominal muscle. I would draw the belly button, I would draw the outside there, I would definitely draw the inside, and I'd probably just do like a few little out muscles there. Something like that. Then draw our back. Now, I actually think that this back area is like the back muscles that kind of go up into the arms. So don't be afraid to be nice and bulky back here with a muscular character. Oops. So just drawing our rough shapes. Okay. Now if I take this Let me just finish the chin. Oops. And add a new frame and show it all. So this is our muscle work with our construct lines. Actually, I should separate that. There we go. So we have our construct lines, adding our muscle work on top, then defining our lines over that, and then when we get rid of the muscle work and the construct lines, here we have the pose in its raw form. And it's not too obnoxious. It's not like, oh, look at me, I've got lines everywhere, you know. But you can see that anatomy is something that has been focused on. You can see that the chest itself is pulled up with the arms, that the torso is very elongated with the pull of this pose. And we can also take into account the size of the rib cage, the back muscles, and the way that the pose pulls the chest into the shoulder muscles. That's about everything I would go over. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Subscribe if you want to keep up to date with the tutorials that I do. And make sure that you comment below if you have any suggestions or comments or want to correct everything that I've said that's false. That's okay. But until next time, have a wonderful unicorn-filled, rainbow-sprinkled day. I hope you enjoyed this video. Links are below to download the original files for reference. Remember, if you animate or draw something cool, be sure to share it on Newgrounds.com, the internet's best source for animations, games, art and music. Until next time, see you later.